It's more arcade goodness for you here on CGRundertow, only this time, all that arcade goodness comes with some good old-fashioned displays of pixelated racial insensitivity. Oh wow, that's very classy, Taito. This is Jungle Hunt. Released to arcades in 1982, Jungle Hunt is an early platformer in the spirit of games like Donkey Kong and movies like The Birth of a Nation. You play as an affluent hunter named Sir Dudley Dashley, a man who shoots animals for fun and has a young blonde wife who's obviously into him for his money. Nonetheless, Penelope has been kidnapped by the savages, and that's when Dudley springs into action. Oh, those savages with their primitive weapons and skeletal jewelry. Don't they always come in the night to just take helpless Caucasian women into the forest with their voodoo magic? Of course, in addition to beating Resident Evil 5 to the punch by almost 30 years, Jungle Hunt is also an old-school side-scroller comprised of 4 levels. Dudley has to swing across the jungle, swim through a crocodile-infested river, and run up a crumbling mountain pass before finally reaching the savages, who have obviously tied Penelope above a boiling pot of savage stew. Listen, I don't want to belabor the point here, but Jungle Hunt, it's got a pretty ridiculous premise. It's obviously based on those old story archetypes about dark-skinned savages who emerge from the jungle to attack white people, stories that are thankfully no longer quite so prevalent. Jungle Hunt is a game people often point to as an early example of racial insensitivity in video games, for reasons that should be fairly obvious. Fortunately, at least the gameplay is pretty solid. Dudley may be a rich asshole, but you can control him pretty easily in Jungle Hunt. The game only uses a single button, and it does different things depending on which level you're in. It jumps from the ropes in the first level, it sticks crocs with a knife in the second. I mean, talk about multitasking. Now, that said, the controls are still a bit floaty. They do have that slightly loose feel you get from some of the games from this era. I mentioned Donkey Kong earlier, and just for the sake of comparison, Jungle Hunt isn't nearly as tight as a game like that, but it is very playable, and to Taito's credit, it isn't the least bit clunky. Jungle Hunt is also a very short game. As an arcade title, it was meant to be replayed over and over for high scores, and at least functionally, you'll have no problem doing so. The game might not be in quite the upper tier of arcade classics, but it looks good and it plays well too. All in all, Jungle Hunt is just a solid game from the early 80s, even though it kind of feels like something from the early 20s.